to know. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so, because the world needs to know. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so, because the world needs to know. The world needs to know. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so, because the world needs to know.
Greetings. Welcome to Say So, where we talk about it, whatever it say so. Where we talk about it, whatever it is. Because what you do not know can hurt you. So let's get to the root. Thank you for tuning in. I'm your host, Letitia R. Stuckey. And for today's episode of Say So, the topic is non-death related grief and loss. In episode 12, my special guest, Tion Vincent, talked about death-related grief and loss. And it got me to thinking about the other ways in which we lose things and grieve those losses that are not related to death. So I want those losses that are not related to death. So I wanted to do some research and explore a little further regarding that topic. Beginning with the question, what is non-death loss? And basically, a person can grieve the loss of anything significant, psychological, spiritual, or interpersonal lives. Now, by physical, I mean your bodily functions, like the loss of your bodily functions in a sickness or illness or something of that nature. Psychologically, embodies your mental or emotional state, any fluctuation in emotional state. Any fluctuation in that area. Spiritual embodies your human spirit or your soul. Your soul is considered the seat of your emotions. So your psychological and your spiritual go hand in hand, so to speak. So your soul consists of your mind, your will, and your emotions. And to interpersonally, that is just how you communicate to and relate with yourself and others. It's important to note that some losses are relatively easy to cope with, while others turn our lives upside down. Please remember and know that loss is still loss, and grief is still experience many losses and grieve many things. Some may result from loss. For example, the loss of a future dream or a change in identity. And this makes me think of, for example, if you've gone through separation or divorce, if you had a dream that you were going to have children and grow old, and that dream is not a reality or an option any further. Change in identity. You go from being married to divorced to eventually single again. So that's also a change in identity and just another example. Now other losses exist on their own. An example of that would be loss of a job, or the end of a relationship. So those, just pretty much exist in the long-term scheme of things. There are unique considerations and challenges related to experiencing non-death loss. And once again, here are some additional examples of losses. Divorce, estrangement. It could be estrangement from a previous spouse, or it could be estrangement from a parent or a child for any length of time. It can be an addiction. It can a loss due to mental illness, a loss due to traumatic brain injury, job loss, infertility, or loss of home, being homeless or going through foreclosure or having to rebuild or start over. Those are just some additional examples of loss. And let's see. So for many, loss is, we deal with loss in different ways. Some individuals, handle loss and it's like you take it in stride and you move on. They say, tough times don't last. Tough people do. Others, grieving the loss of someone may be more challenging. It may take longer for them to process. It may take longer for them to vacillate through the 5 steps of grief. And just to review from episode 12, and if you have not listened to that, please go back and listen to it, because it gives a different slant and personal testimony and story of survival for myself and my special guest at the time. So the 5 stages of grief are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And you may get stuck in one or any of those levels. You may not then anger. You may not go through them in that specific order either. So it's just important to know what those stages are, and that at some point, in order for the grieving process to conclude, or for the healing to fully take place or residence in your life, you will go through those 5 those grief. So regardless of the form of grief, grief is real. And it can bring on difficult feelings that are confusing and that may seem overwhelming at times. Now, there are the most common reactions to grief. There are 8 common reactions to grief. There are 8 of them. And there are feelings of loneliness and isolation, a desire to be alone, or instability, not wanting to converse with or reach out to family, friends, or loved ones. The next one is feeling a loss of feelings, just kind of feeling not like yourself for whatever reason. Feeling like you're going crazy. Is the example that they've given, when you're just not feeling like yourself. It's almost like you're in an out-of-body experience, or some people describe it as feeling like they're in a dream or a nightmare and not being able to wake up because the reality is you have suffered that loss and you're grieving that loss. But if you're just dreaming, then it never happened, and when I wake up, this will all be, passing, and it won't be my reality. The third would be difficulty constantly, professionally, spiritually, emotionally, psychologically. Then it's difficult to concentrate on one specific thing. It might be difficult to focus at work, or difficult to be present with your children, or whatever your daily routine is. A disruption in that could happen because you can't focus. And there are intrusive thoughts about what you've lost, or the person, or the dreams that, are crumbling or have crumbled. So it can be difficult to concentrate. You can experience numbness, where nothing phases you. It's like you're almost sleepwalking. You've experienced an overwhelming amount of pain, and you're just numb. Like you don't feel anything. You don't care. You're doing the bare minimum of what you have to do, and the rest can just fall by the wayside because it's not important or significant to you at the moment. The next one is guilt, remorse, or constant anxiety over what could have been. And that makes me think of like relationships that have broken up, and maybe you were engaged, or you thought he was the one or she was the one, and you thought that it's dissolved or not your reality at the moment. Then you're thinking about, well, we did have good times, and all you can focus on is the good times, or the fact that you wanted to have his children, or wanted him to be in your life consistently, or for the rest of your life. So everybody processes or blame yourself, or feel like you did something wrong, or feel like, had I not done this, then we wouldn't be here. Things of that nature. Also, anxiety, once again, and fear is the next common reaction to losses of grief. And anxiety is literally just fear. It's like preparing yourself for the worst, because you feel like you're the fall guy, or you always take one for the team, or if anything bad is going to happen, it's going to happen to me of all people. So you're just fearful. You're on eggshell. You're expecting the unexpected. It's a very uncertain place. It's almost a tormenting place, because there's no peace, or very little peace present when when fear and anxiety are in your life and ruling your lives. Some people even have panic attacks, and it's like their entire life is changed and shifted because of things that they've experienced that they haven't really processed or dealt with. and they're carrying them, and they come out at the most inopportune times. The next reaction is irritability, frustration at yourself or someone or the situation. So just being, irritable for no reason, snappy for no reason, having an attitude, just a ugly or negative disposition, for no real reason. It's because there's something going on inside of you that you haven't yet dealt with, and you haven't confronted. So it's coming out in your emotions, mood swings, and you just not really being yourself. The next reaction is listlessness, or being lethargic, or basically general exhaustion. It makes me think of depression, when you don't want to get out of the bed. You may not want to bathe. You don't want to take care of personal care. You don't want to eat. You don't want to drink. You just want to stay there. And it's almost like drowning or soaking in whatever you're in. You don't have the energy or the strength or even the desire to get up, from where you are. It's important to remember that grief is as unique as the individuals who experience it. So there's no cookie cutter way to experience grief. You don't have to be crying all the time for people to know that you're grieving, or for you to even know that you're grieving. In today's society, we have typically the mentality, you do what you have to do. So if you got to get up and go to work, you don't have time to grieve. If you have to, cook for these kids, or do laundry, or keep your household running, you don't have time to grieve. And what happens is we don't take the time to grieve because we've got so many other things vying for we feel like we have to do, that's already pre-scheduled and on the calendar, and that we on our to-do list we plan to do. And grief never seems to make it on there, or take time to just take a deep breath, take 5 minutes to do something that you enjoy. Take 5 minutes to process your emotions, how you doing, where you are, where your heart is, how you're feeling. And we just, we build, almost like the snowball effect. We build grief on top of grief on top of grief, loss on top of loss on top of loss. And at some point it's going to come up and out. And it's going to be a major display because it's snowballed, it's accumulated. So you may go from 1 to 100, and people are like, wow, what triggered that? What happened? Because the presenting situation should not have warranted that heavy of an emotional breakdown, or that heavy of a reaction. So definitely, it's important to take time to consciously grieve, to consciously talk about or process how your life has changed, what this loss has done to you. It's important to be patient with yourself. Sometimes there are those of us that are patient with everyone else except ourselves, because we feel like, look, I got things to do, I got money to make, I got to keep this moving, I got to keep the ball rolling. And we can be patient with our clients. We can be patient with our children. We can be patient with family members and friends. But when it comes to us, it's like, I don't have time to grieve. I don't have time to be sad. I don't have to feel these emotions. I got to go. I got to keep it moving, and so on and so forth. But you have to be patient with yourself and allow yourself that time and that space and the opportunity to grieve the loss or the losses. It's important to also know that there is no quick fix. There's no quick fix. There's no 12-step program for grieving. And after you finish step number 12, you're done, and you never have to worry about grieving for the rest of your life. As I previously stated, we're all going to suffer some losses. We're all going to grieve some things that were in our lives that no longer is, or whatever the situation. Note that some losses are more predictable, and examples of predictable losses would be planning a retirement party at the end of your career, because at some point, you're going to age out. At some point, you're going to not want to punch somebody else's clock or work for someone else. You can plan for that. So that's more eventually. Another, or an alternate example of something that's not necessarily predictable, is walking into work and being laid off. You had planned to maybe retire from this place, and you did not expect to walk in and get your pink slip, or get laid off. Expect to walk in and get your pink slip, or get laid off for whatever reason, because of the economy or because of the pandemic, or the company needs to, lighten their load financially or whatever. So that's one that's unpredictable, unexpected. That's not something that you could plan for. And some would even say that's a crisis. A crisis is something that's certain and it is sudden, and it's nothing you can plan for. So, your reaction is gonna vary depending on the situation and as well as the individual experiencing the situation or situations. Now, for some, grieving the loss in advance can help ease the pain. And grieving the loss in advance can help ease the pain. And I know for me, before I went through my separation and divorce, I literally grieved it before we even separated. We were still in the same household, and I grieved because I knew that it was coming to an end. I had prayed about it and I had gotten an answer from God and go. So I did that. But prior to that, while in the waiting process and after I got that confirmation, I grieved it because I knew this was the end. This is the parting of ways. Like this marriage is just being dissolved. It will be no more. And so that's just an example. Being dissolved, it will be no more. And so that's just an example of grieving in advance that I've personally experienced. And for others, the anxiety of the known loss simply adds to the stress and trauma of the event. So knowing that, we have or the final hearing to grant or not grant the divorce, that anxiety, knowing that this is going to happen, and on this day when I walk into the courtroom, I may walk into the courtroom married, but when I walk out, I will be officially divorced. That could, for either party, the person being divorced or the for either party, the person being divorced or the person divorcing, for either party, that could just definitely be an experience for them. It might be exciting for one and sad for the other, or vice versa. And for others, it's difficult to predict their reactions until they, just explode into tears. It could be tears of joy, or it could be tears of, once again, grieving or mourning that loss. It just depends on the individual as well as your perception of what's going on. So it's important to take care of yourself physically and emotional. It's critical and emotional. It's critical. It's vital at all times when you're going through the grieving process. And once again, you have to know that you're going through the grieving process in order to ensure that you do these things emotionally and physically for yourself. Unless you live a healthy lifestyle and you just exercise and you just take time to self-evaluate and process at the end of your day how your day went, or how tomorrow is going to be better, or what you need to do and things of that nature, and just allow yourself to feel emotionally what you need to feel at that time. Whether you're grieving the end of a marriage or a critical illness, the way that you cope matters the most. And there are positive coping skills and mechanisms, and there are negative coping skills and mechanisms. And we'll get into some of those a little later. So it's important to let yourself feel the grief. Because grief needs an outlet, no matter how painful. A lot of times we get to the place where we stuff things and we stuff emotions. Somebody offends us and we just, it's like water off a duck's back, and we pretend like it's okay. And now you don't even speak to that person. It's because you're holding on to that offense or whatever you perceive that they've done to you. And they may have not purposely or intentionally done that to you. And had you chose to have a conversation with them, maybe they were rushing, or they had so much on their mind, or it may have looked like they didn't wave or didn't speak, but they were looking past you because they were processing all the 10 things that they still have left to do or whatever. So it's important, to know that everything or anything that you're carrying psychologically in your mind or your thought life, heart or in your emotions, it's important to know that needs an outlet. You can't just carry and accumulate stuff. That's why they come up with the term of baggage, because sometimes we just carry, somebody offended me. Okay, that's fine. I just went through separation or divorce. I'm homeless. My children are acting up. I just lost my job. We as a people, we think that we can, or live under the facade and the mask that we can handle any and everything, when in reality, that's not always the case. It's almost never the case, honestly. So we begin that we really don't need to carry along with us. If you're going on a business trip, after the trip, you need to unpack, because there are clothes that you've worn that are soiled or dirty, or that need to be washed or dry cleaned. There are things that you need to put back up. Like if you brought your own personal comb and brush or your personal care hygiene stuff, those things need to be put in your residence or where you're living. So it's customary to unpack. But a lot of times, emotionally or psychologically, we carry things, and grief and loss can be one of those many things that we carry and accumulate over time. And eventually it's going to find its own way to get out. It's going to find its own outlet if you don't purposely channel it, direct it, and give it a positive outlet. So it's definitely very important to focus on your body and your mind care. And ways to do that is, number one, through nutrition. Deprives your body of energy and strength. We talked previously about being lethargic, having extreme exhaustion, just not really having the energy, the get up and go, the will to do much. So now that we know that grief deprives your body of energy and strength, then we know that we're going to have to do some things. To replenish that energy and that strength. Examples of that as it relates to nutrition is eating whole grains and nutritious meals to keep your body strong while you're healing. And the second way to focus on your body and mind care, enough sleep. It says that grief and sleepiness go hand in hand, and your body and your mind heal during sleep. So if you're not getting enough sleep, your body is not resting enough. Like your body, that's almost the only time where your body is in a completely rested state. All of your body is resting and lying down. All of your body has kind of turned in for the night or shut down on some capacity. And it's important to do that. Even sometimes you can get sleep that's not so restful. Like if you sleep with a television on, your mind is still putting in music and sounds and commercials and things of that nature subconsciously, which is unconsciously, but it's still activity, because there's still energy, there's still vibrations, there's still sound going into your ear gates, even though your eye gates are closed. So you're still receiving feedback. But if you want to get the most restful, sleep, turn off the television, turn off the radio, turn off everything. And then your mind and your body has a better chance of not receiving feedback and not receiving, and unless you live in a neighborhood where it's really noisy, your neighbor next door, by turning off everything. If you're able to sleep that way. I know some people are not able to just sleep in total silence or total darkness. But just tailor it as much as possible to your individual situation. The third way to focus on your body and your mind care is to rest. Lethargy, or basically being completely exhausted, can be a part of the grieving process. Relaxation means pampering yourself. It means indulging yourself. It's a feeling of being pampered. So an example would be getting a massage. That helps you to relax. It relaxes your muscles. It relaxes your mind. It incorporates just a lot of your physical, your body to help it to get and stay in a relaxed state. After you get a massage, typically you're usually that thing out all day if you can. You're typically really relaxed. Your mood and your mind frame can change from the person that walks in to the person that walks out. That's why after you get a massage, they're like, how do you feel? Because they want you to take note of the fact that, I'm less tense. I don't have any muscle tension. My shoulders are, I'm less tense. I don't have any muscle tension. My shoulders are relaxed and my body is relaxed. Therefore, my mind is relaxed, if only for that moment. The fourth way to focus on your body and your mind care is professional help. Seek professional help. We feel like I'm not crazy. I'm not finna pay nobody to sit and tell them all my business or to judge me or to prescribe me medication or to do, these other things. I'm not finna talk to a stranger about what's going on in my life, so on and so forth. But it's important and it's needed. Even as a certified life coach, sometimes you may not need a therapist or counseling. You just need somebody to assess the situation where you are and to give you some tools to kind of get you back up, pick yourself up, dust yourself off, get back out there in the game of life because you have things to do, so it may not you actually have to go to a counselor or a therapist. Now, if need be, then please, by all means, do so, because I've gone to counseling. I've gone to a therapist. I'm a professional life coach. I have a mentor. So at some point, the best of us is going to need somebody to help to replenish our supply long enough to stop, take a moment so that we can replenish our supply and see what things bring us pleasure that we haven't done in a month or 2 months or years even, or ever done in our lives. So it's important to seek professional help. There is absolutely nothing wrong with seeking professional help. A lot of us suffer in professional help. A lot of us suffer in silence because we're strong, we can handle it, or because we're in leadership, or because of the title that we have. I'm the bishop. I shouldn't need to go to counseling or therapy. Or whatever leadership or role that we play. I'm a wife, I'm a husband, I'm this, I'm the head, but you're also human. And it's nothing wrong with asking for help. Some of us that are used to being the helper, myself, it becomes difficult or challenging to ask for help because we're so used to having the answers. We're so used to people coming to us. We're so used to being the wise one. We're so used to being the wise one. We're so used to being the one that's perceived to have it all together. You're so organized. You're so this, and you're so insightful, and you're so encouraging, and you're so motivating, and so on and so forth, or inspiring. But at some point, your cup needs to be filled as well on a daily, consistent basis. That's why devotion is so important and critical, because you're taking that time for God to pour into you. You're taking that time to be still in his presence and listen. Even if you don't do anything, if you don't say anything, even if you fall asleep, you're still in his presence. And where better place to be but resting in the arms of your heavenly Father, and because he knows that we need rest, and he appoints rest to us. He said in his word, those that labor and are weary, come unto me and I will give you rest. So he's well aware that rest is definitely important and needful in our lives. It says under professional help that grief can feel too big to bear. Seeking help is the best way to begin dealing with your grief in a productive manner. So it's definitely important to do so. And I'm going to introduce a new term for myself, at least. It's disenfranchised grief. And that's just another term for non-death related grief. Or another form. So disenfranchised grief, the term was coined by Ken Doka, D-O-K-A. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. About 20 years ago. And basically it says that grief is a person's experience when they incur a loss that is not or cannot be openly acknowledged. It goes against the public norm, or it can't be publicly mourned. So disenfranchised grief is also known as hidden grief or sorrow. And it typically goes unacknowledged or unvalidated by social norms. There are several reasons that disenfranchised grief exists. And it falls into one or more of several categories. And there's a total of 5. And I'll just briefly go over these, and we'll continue on the following episode with more information on disenfranchised grief. So the 5 reasons and categories that disenfranchised grief falls in is that And once again, this is hidden grief because socially or publicly, or this situation should not be, and I'm putting up invisible quotes, should not be mourned. Okay, because the individual is seen as unworthy. So for example, their non-death related losses. So most people, when they think of grief and loss, they put it in the box of, okay, who died? They put it in the box of, okay, who died or what happened? You know what I'm saying? That you've lost someone. But sometimes that individual is still alive and breathing, but you've just maybe lost them in your life, or, they lost their position in your life. They disqualified themselves on some level. So the second one is the example provided is, for example, the partner. This is your partner. So this connotates same-sex marriage or same-sex relationships, or extramarital affairs. So you're committing adultery. One or both of you are married, and there's a loss of some sort, and you're grieving that. And because the relationship is stigmatized, it's not validated or seen as or acknowledged as commonly as the death of someone. The third category is the mechanism of death is stigmatized. So for example, some individuals may feel that if the person committed suicide, or if they overdosed and died as a result, then that shouldn't be grieved or mourned, or people have their own opinions surrounding those sorts of situations. The fourth category is that the person is not recognized as a griever. So for example, if it's your co-worker, or your individuals may feel like, well, why are you crying? You should be happy, or, what I'm saying, that I didn't know that you guys were that close, or I didn't know that it would affect you this way, or it seems like, you wouldn't be taking this so hard, or different things of that nature. And the fifth reason is because the way the person grieving is stigmatized. So if there's an absence of the outward display of grief or their response, or on the other side of the spectrum, it's extreme grief responses. So, it's extreme grief responses. So, people assume that when grieving, you have to cry, and be emotional or unstable, or, just mood swings. Like I said previously, being irritable or really sad or really angry or things of that nature. Individuals perceive that you should, then that's what they're referring to in number 5, and the way you grieve being stigmatized. So once again, we're reaching the end of this episode, and this topic of non-death related grief will be continued on the next episode of Say So. I think it's important for you to remember that God has the final say so about where you have been, you're simply in the process of becoming. Until next time, miracles and blessings to you today and every day.
Let the redeemed of the Lord say so, because the world needs to know. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so, because the world needs to know. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so, because the